with all that being said, it's now time to talk about the most important sponsor of the show, Rise Lentless. That's RISELENTLESS. Rolls right up the tongue. Rise Lentless. Never stop rising. It is my coffee mug company for entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and everyone who dares to dream big.
I gotta
That
say that Danny has risen his Rise Lentless game in the last week. All right,
you think
he has
so?
added some cups on there
Yep.
that are extraordinary. I like them a lot.
We have a
That's all I'm
dozen
saying.
mugs on there now.
You have a dozen mugs on there now?
We got a
12?
dozen mugs on
Really?
there now. We're gonna.
But
I'm gonna add stickers pretty soon.
and the Rise Lentless mug itself, the Phoenix rising
Yes,
from the ashes,
that's
one of
correct.
my favorite in all of them. But so you should definitely go check it out. He has definitely upped
Aw,
his game, probably because I gave him a hard time last week. I'm
yeah.
just taking credit for his hard work. That's all it is.
Okay. You're getting big man to be complimentary is a nearly. It's like trying to get the water turned on in Central Texas right now. Ain't happening, folks. But this last one's a fun story, and the big man sent it to me, and he's usually not allowed to do that.
Yeah, you know.
But the first 3D printed house, I think in the United States, is going for up for sale.
No, it's the first three. As usual, Danny gets it half right because his research is lacking. It's the first house that actually gets a what's called in the business in the construction world a certificate of occupancy, right? So
Oh,
the first 3D printed house in the United States, that first permitted 3D house built in the United, was actually built in Austin by a company
okay,
called Icon in 2018.
right.
However, it was nobody lives in that house, right? It was a house built as a hey, we can do this. Does that make sense? And it was permitted, but this is the first one that's actually made it to hey, we've met all the building codes. That's what a certificate of occupancy means, right? It meets all the
Right.
building codes. Somebody can live in this house.
Right.
Now, this is a
And New
company.
York's, even though it's New York State, that's a pretty stringent, their building
Absolutely.
codes are not a joke there, It's cold
Um,
climate.
Well, it's a 1,400 square foot house, 1,400 square foot, 2.5 car garage.
You know what they
It's
call that in New York, right?
what's that?
A mansion.
Yeah, probably. And down here in Texas, that's tiny. But look, it all comes down. This is technology has been around for a little over a
Right.
decade now. They've been working on it for 30 years, right? On small scales 3D printing, right? And there's a future of 3D printing in a lot of different, from medical all the way to construction and stuff like this. What they're really working toward in this case, this company's take on it is automation, right?
Right.
That they've built a machine that built this house, not a whole bunch of other stuff. And they're working out, like always, how do we build the house in this way and still get the plumbing right and still get, you know what I mean,
Right.
electricity right and all that. Building the shape of a house and the walls of a house is simple, right? That's not a
Right.
hard thing. Most of these are all made out of concrete, right, or
Yep.
some form of concrete. There's actually another company that I read about years ago that before this 3D printing process come about. It's what's it called? It's called insulated concrete blocks, where
Yeah.
essentially they're like styrofoam blocks made out of concrete, and they look like Legos. And you
Right.
can put together a house, or at least a small house out in the middle of nowhere, in like a day, right?
Right.
And they're already
And
insulated. You don't need extra insulation,
right.
all of that kind of stuff.
And this is to say, like when we say 3D printed, right? It conjures up this notion of like, but basically all it did was multiple layers of concrete,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a machine, and it just layers the concrete until the house is up.
Exactly.
And and I think that it's a good thing, and it's going to disrupt an industry that is kindly, it is due for some disruption, right? If
I
I'm being perfectly kind,
I hope so, because here's the as we were talking about on the New York Stock Exchange story on this
Right.
podcast, is when you get into regulation and allowing
Yep.
and stuff like this, the hurdle is right now, because here's the promotion of 3D printing houses. 50% cheaper,
Yeah.
okay, less than 10% of the time. So if it takes an average of 6 months to build a house, this takes like a couple of weeks, and it's
Right.
done, right?
Yeah.
So less time, 50% less cost, right?
Right.
This house is for sale for $300,000 in Riverdale, New York, right?
Right.
So there's plenty of profit margin, and you can charge a lot less for the house. Really, you're buying the land, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But if I take how we traditionally build a house in a given area,
Yeah.
how many people does it normally take? Right now, you need a concrete. You got slab people that come in.
Yeah.
You have framers that come in. You have sheetrockers that come in. Right.
Totally.
And so, any government that's looking at this, hey, we're gonna let you build concrete houses in this area,
Right.
they're gonna get some pushback from existing builders. Going,
Right.
that means we got to lay off 90% of our staff. If the only people that have to come in is come take a day to put this robot,
Yeah.
and then move it to the next lot, and then move it to the next lot, move it to the next lot, how many people are you putting out of work? That's always going to be the right.
I hear what you're saying, but the long term ramification, yeah, it's less people working, but housing is always a shortage. We
Always.
always need more housing. So I think the benefits will outweigh the consequences of labor, of the labor consequences. I think the benefit to the market will outweigh that.
I agree, and usually that wins out. But I will tell you this. I think before you see this used on a national scale to build houses, before you get these, I looked it up, and there's only like 12 or 14 global companies that are really trying to push this housing 3D printing market.
Of course, yeah, of course.
And I think before it's really embraced, I think you're going to see much smaller scale projects. Something like Austin. The reason Austin let that house being built in 2018 is obviously here in Austin is one of the parts of the country that has a huge homeless population, right?
That's right.
Thing. And if the government can get away with letting them 3D print 600 square foot houses, which, oh, by the way, up until this one being 1,400 square, most of these that have been built anywhere in the world are 6,
Small.
7, 800 square
Yeah.
foot, right? If the city of Austin can get some strange contract by one of these 3D builders to build 50, 600
Yeah.
square foot homes on the cheap.
There's that land out in East Austin. I think it's 20 or 30 acres or something like that.
Yeah, and if they can build 600 square foot homes for the homeless, and it's not in somebody's backyard, and it costs them, 10% of what it would normally cost to build these houses, I think you're going to see projects like that are more government or state or city projects.
I think that, in more rural areas, other countries, I think this will become popular. I also do think in 15 years' time, where the technology gets smaller, it gets way more affordable to buy these things up. I think you're going to see people tear down old homes, because it's now going to be cheaper to just tear down an old, like if you go off of South Congress right now in Austin, Texas, there is this. It's so fascinating. Tiny little old house, $1 million house.
Yes.
Right? Fancy $1 million house. Tiny little shack, $2 million. Like it's this weird thing. I think you're going to see more of that. And I think you're going to see people tear down old houses because they simply cannot compete with the efficiency too that this offers, the energy efficiency of something like this, right? How it's going to move air better.
Well, and here's the other part of that is most people buy homes with lending the money, right?
With
Lenders
mortgages?
aren't. I guarantee you right now, mortgage isn't going to give you any money for this home, right?
You
The
think
person
so?
that buys this home is going to buy it cash.
You
because,
think so?
Look, lenders like stability, and if I come to you and say, "Hey, this home was built by a 3D printer,"
Yeah.
right, and whatever. Nobody knows the longevity of that. Nobody knows
so
the
true.
stability of that. So it's
built with a 3D printer, but it's concrete. Right.
Again, you're talking about something that's not normal. It's not mainstream. And when you're talking about using someone else's money to do something for you, anything outside of the box, outside of the norm, is higher risk. They consider it higher risk.
Fair enough.
Can you find lender like trailer homes have been around forever? Most lenders don't lend on trailer homes, right?
That's so
They've
true.
been around forever. So
That's very true.
I think so. Then you talk about, well, obviously, if there's a market,
Manufactured homes are very tough to get traditional mortgages on.
right, absolutely. So then
Yeah.
you add that. So, and look, you and I know the way the market works. Somebody out there will loan people money for these things if it was to get on, right? There'll be a whole
Right.
new market of lenders specifically for
Yeah,
3D
like
printed
listen,
homes.
a company will one of these fintech companies will be like, "Hey, we're going to specialize in 3D printed home financing."
Sure. But that's
And
just
then a
another
big
hurdle.
bank, yeah, and then a big bank will come along and buy them eventually.
Because
So,
look, if I could get a 3,000 square foot home, if I can go out, like again in the next couple of years, let's say this company or any other company, if I can buy a lot out on the lake in the middle of nowhere in Texas,
yeah,
right, at lakefront, and have this company come out and build me a 2,000
3D
square
print,
foot
yeah,
4 bedroom, right on the lake, and do it at 20% of the cost,
yeah,
hey, I'm all for it
of course,
if it can happen. But that's what I think, that's the first step they're going to take. There's no way in the current system they would be able to go out like a developer does right now, a DR Horton or a Lennar or whatever, and just buy up, right, 100 acres, split it up, and start building homes.
right,
Nobody would buy them because they would have to buy them for cash, regardless of how great of a deal it was.
totally. I hear you.
You know, but
Right.
I hope it does. I really do.
I
Bringing
just
costs
don't
down
see
of
it.
homes.
I don't see it going anywhere. I don't see it. I mean, meaning in the sense that I don't see them getting regulated out of the industry. I only think it's going to advance, and eventually, we're all going to be living in 3D printed homes, right?
Well, yeah, even if it doesn't look like this in concrete, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this, when you look at this, when you actually, and there's a bunch of videos, just type in 3D printed homes,
yeah,
and
they're
you can
fascinating to
see
watch.
they're great to watch, but you're really laying concrete, which we've done for hundreds of years,
It
by the
is
way.
nothing new. It's layer manufacturing, right? That's how 3D printers work. They one layer of something and then another layer of plastic or whatever
So
composite.
it's an automated take on an already existing technology,
Yeah, so
right?
that's why I think getting to the point where you're going to have funding problems, I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal because these are existing processes that have been automated, right?
Right.
Concrete homes already exist. Building an entire house out of concrete's already a thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just cost prohibitive because of the labor.
Right.
Um, because once you kind of solve the labor problem, as this has been solved here, I mean, when you're talking about like stick construction as compared to concrete, I'd rather have the concrete. That's what I would want. I would think that's going to last longer.
You would hope so, but but then it gets into the unknown factor. So anyway, I hope it does. I hope it continues, and I hope it gets to that point where they are a viable option in most
Yeah,
areas,
but
because
listen,
bringing the cost of building a home down just does everybody favors.
it does.
You
It
still
works
want
for everybody.
Yeah, you still want your home built the way we build them right now. Hey,
Yeah,
that option's still available to you.
totally
But it
fine. Yeah,
costs X, right? You want this kind of home, it's also available, and it costs Y, and it's cheaper.
yeah.
Giving people a cheaper option that is just as good or close to as good of a product, in my opinion, is very rarely, right, a bad thing.
Yeah, never. There is. I totally get the argument you were making about, hey, we're cutting out all of this labor now, right? Guess what? You still need an electrician to come in there
Yep.
and wire the house. You need a plumber to come in there and plumb the house. We're just cutting out the framing, and we're just cutting out drywall. Okay.
Right.
So, and I don't even know. Maybe you still need the place drywalled after because you still got to frame it and drywall it.
If you want it to look like that,
Like a house.
that's the whole look trend that you can't get past. Like, these look like, on the outside and
Yeah,
inside for that matter, they look like a bunch of layered concrete, right?
it
A
looks
bunch
like.
of patties sitting on top of patties on
Yep.
top, right? And then do you have to, what is the cost of, if you want it to look like brick on the outside, laying
Yeah.
brick or something, what is the cost of hanging that sheetrock on the inside? What's the process of hanging that sheetrock to concrete versus wood, right?
Yeah.
Does that increase? So there's a bunch of all these questions that I'm sure has answers to,
Yeah.
but
There's somebody's already answered them.
it's not as simple as, it never is as simple as, hey, this is 10%, 90% cheaper and it's going to be available to everybody next week. It's never
Totally.
that simple, right?
It's never going to be that simple, but I've been somebody who's watched 3D printing and home manufacturing. Um, I've been tracking the trends since the beginning, since I understood what it was. And I am optimistic about its future overall. And these automated processes of manufacturing, like 3D printing and the sense of this house too, I think it's only a benefit to the global consumer. I think it's
I
only
agree.
a benefit to the people who are out there. And I think it's going to do the exact same thing. Like we have a situation where 15 years ago, you had to be a wealthy person to carry a smartphone. And
Right.
now you can walk into Walmart and for $150, you can get a phone that does almost everything that an iPhone does.
Yep.
Right? You can go get for 150, $200, you can go buy a company called BLU, Blue Smartphones, and you can go buy a phone at Best Buy, Walmart, and it does most of what a $1,200 iPhone does. Right?
Yep.
The effective capability of an iPhone, and you're paying a tenth the cost. And I don't see that being a bad thing for the end user and the consumer. So
Right. No, and that's really where this stands. I think you're going to see more of a, like most things, niche marketplaces. Like you said, at home 3D printers and stuff, there's still a niche market. There are some businesses out there that use them for specialty tools and stuff like
Yes.
that. But again, when you're a small business, it's not at the level of mass production, right? So you have to be a niche.
So for prototyping, 3D printers are huge now. And there's another interesting business, Jay Leno's Garage, right? I love Jay Leno because he's a car guy. I'm a car guy. He has, I don't know how many cars
Yeah, it's like an airplane hangar, right, or something
No,
like that.
it was an airplane hangar. Now it's 4.
Nice.
Yeah, but he has all these old vintage cars, and I'm not talking like 60s, 70s muscle vintage. I'm talking 1900s, like late 1800s, like the first Mercedes steam car, whatever. Well, he has a 3D printer, and they just scan the old parts when they break, and they have it takes a day or two because they're metal, because they're carving, because they're doing metal carving or whatever. But the point is, they have an automated machine that can just go reproduce parts and stuff like that. And so I don't think, not only is it not going anywhere, I think there is a future where you have they have a 3D printer in your house.
Yeah, no, look, I think this has a future in most industries. I think this now, housing to me is a distant secondary. I think you're going to see 3D. They've talked about it in medicine, right? Not only prosthetics, but things. UK 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure when we talk about machines inside of our bodies, right? We're talking about UK literally for the first time in history, just for human trials, is released a product. It's a mechanical human heart, fully mechanical, valves, everything.
Wow.
It's a machine heart, right? Left ventricle, right ventricle, lower, all of it, right? Machine heart.
Somebody took anatomy.
Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with it. Just approved it for human trials. Now, if those go well, you're talking about, think about that. Let's just say it works for argument's sake. 3D printing, you think wouldn't come into that? Where they just take it and go, hey, we're scanning it inside and out. We're going to build 1 billion of these.
Right. Well, the shout out to Kurzweil, the singularity approaches. That's all I can say.
Hey, wasn't that supposed to be? Is that guy still alive? Is that the guy that said, "I just need to live until I'm 90 to get to"? Right. Whatever. Hey,
I think that's Kurzweil. Yeah.
I don't know about my lifetime, but maybe in my kid's lifetime, there is a future where we can replace just about anything.
Yeah, where we're going to upload our consciousness to a server somewhere.
Well, I don't know about that, but Amazon
Web Services is going to say, your brain no longer conforms to our terms of service.
You
So
are
we're
now
deleting your
outdated
brain.
software,
Yeah.
and yeah, but no, I think in my children's future, like cancer, they won't cure cancer. What they'll do is figure out how if you have liver cancer, they just take yours out and give you another one.
Yeah.
They don't even have to do why cure cancer when you can just replace the part of your body with cancer's at.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So anyway, that's my
Well,
point
hey,
of it. I
that's
hope it works out.
this was a fun show. I just want to close out with a pro tip for everybody. Read the subtitles on any TV show for an entire season. It's the same thing as reading a book.
I don't know where you come up with these pro tips, but God help me. I don't. I think they make me dumber.
They're from my brain.
Then your brain's an idiot.
So are yours.
See you later, folks.
Bye now.